after the show got done, I don't know how much gin Antman had to drink. I don't know how much it takes for him to get drunk, but he was ossified black. Well, I wouldn't say ossified because that means you're just laying there. Like belligerently blackout drunk. To the point where he's standing up and he would start screaming at Tor. And then Tor would scream back at him, and then Antman would forget what he's arguing about. Then he would swivel around and he would start screaming at Monk and like sticking a finger in his face. And this went on for, I don't even, probably an hour. But he's, I think, belligerently drunk is a fair way to characterize it. Antman immediately started blaming Orgy Beard. He's making them drinks too strong. It ain't my fault. It's at one point we look up and he's gone.
Yeah.
And generally when that happens, it's when he knows he's too drunk to drive and he doesn't want to get lectured by us. So he sneaks out so that he can drunk drive home without us fucking saying, give me your keys, call you an Uber, things that adults do.
Right.
So I'm like, shit, if he drove home, like, that's a goddamn problem. And I wanted to call him, but I'm like, shit, if he's drunk driving home, I don't want to fucking call him because then, like...
It's another, yeah.
Once he is looking at his phone, he's looking at his phone. So we're all out. We're just like, saying goodbye. And, hey, great show, everybody. Great show, everybody. I think it's the next day. He came over for the All Suggest Saturday night. No, shit. I'm working at the shop. Thank you, everybody that came by the shop, by the way. I got a call from Antman like at 1. Dukes, I'll be up there in a little bit. I got an Uber to get my car. I was like, oh, really? Where is it? He goes, it's at Patriots. I went to Patriots. I don't know why, but I did. And I said, Antman, you told me your car was... Because before, remember, he had some line about the reason why we didn't see his car in the parking lot for this building was that he had parked behind the building for some reason, which is just a very clean, clear-cut setup for an Antman lie.
And now remembering, I walked in with Antman and he parked in our lot.
Okay.
I just now remember that.
Well, he didn't end up there. So he said, I'm Ubering to Patriots. And I said, is your car at Patriots? Because you told me it was behind the building where we have the studio. And he said, holy shit, maybe it's there. I don't know. I said, well, if you Uber to Patriots, you have to walk about a mile to get back. Why don't you Uber over there first, check it out, and then if it isn't there, you can walk to the store, and then I'll take you over to Patriots. Something like that. He's like, all right. He Ubers over. For some reason, he moved his car to the bank parking lot next door because he didn't want his car to get towed.
Uh-huh.
And I told him, hey, man, no one's ever gotten towed out here, ever. Like, there was a car that was sitting up here for fucking 2 years and nobody towed it out of here. Like, moving it to a bank parking lot is a good way to get it fucking towed.
This is a place where I would store my car.
Yeah, of course, because people steal their cars here. He says, well, I think what happened is that John from John and Amanda started blowing up my phone saying, come to Patriots so we could do shots. So I said, I'm going to park my car and walk to Patriots. We're going to do shots. And I was like, all right. I was like, that wasn't a good idea. He said, you tell me. I called 4 Ubers. I didn't answer any of them. They got my fucking review down to 0%. He said he didn't want to walk the Patriots, so he called 3 straight Ubers, but then he fucking didn't look at his phone or he didn't meet them up. So, like, by the time he was leaving Patriots to go home and called an Uber to get home, he had to, like, debate with the guy for 20 minutes. It's because they didn't want to go anymore because he kept fucking not showing up when the Uber showed up.
Right.
He said it cost him $130 to get home because they just charged him a full trip every single time he didn't show. So this is Saturday night. He's like, Mel, I like John, and he wanted to hang out, so we had some drinks at Patriots, and then I went home. Fell into the... It's a nightmare. It never ends. He says he gets out of the Uber and he walks, and he's walking into his house, but he can't hold the piss anymore because it's been 20 minutes since he's pissed.
Oh, my God.
Do you think he pisses in his yard?
Oh. Would he just piss right in the cul-de-sac?
Walks right over to his neighbor's house, starts pissing in their fucking garden. Then he tries to, like, hitch up his giant fucking pants and get that giant ass back inside of him. Trips, falls into their rose bush. Destroys it. Just completely destroys the rose bush.
Oh, my God.
It's fucking wrecked. Gets up. He's bleeding.
That poor thing.
Dude, he's bleeding. He's got thorns. He's got thorns in his forearms. It looks like he's wrestled a mongoose.
Why would you just dive into a cactus?
It'd be safer.
fucking rosebush sucks.
So he gets up the next day. He doesn't remember about how he's bleeding all over the fucking his bed sheets, or blood everywhere, and he can't figure out what happened. And then he looks out the window, and the neighbors are trying to desperately resuscitate this rosebush.
I don't know what happened, honey.
They're like, he said they were distraught.
Dude, it's about to be like season for it to be in full bloom. It's that stinks.
He said, "Man, they're out there." He goes, "They really like the garden. They're always out there, and I just killed that rose bush. I feel bad." And he pissed all over it. Like, he's pissed everywhere. So you know he fell on his own piss too. I mean, you know that he did.
This is a heinous story.
It's not even the worst.
And I got to assume it's an older couple. And and they
Dude,
just
you've been to his house.
yes,
right?
yes.
I mean, when I wish.
They don't deserve that.
No, and I wish I could show the audience where they live. It is the most it's so suburban that it's like the families have already been raised and the kids have moved out, and like they're older couples that are like becoming senior citizens before they, downsize into a fucking condo. It's the quietest neighborhood ever.
Tucked away, it's hidden.
I grew up in around Antman's neighborhood. Like, you wouldn't believe how suburban it is. There is nothing going on. After 8 o'clock, you could hear a pin drop in his whole fucking neighborhood. And he just comes crashing into the fucking pissing everywhere and falling into the rosebush. So he gets his Uber. He figures out, car's over here. He comes over to the shop. He's like, "Diggs, man, I don't know how the car didn't get towed. I parked horizontal instead of vertical." I was like, "What?" And he said he parked lengthwise, so he's taking up like 3 spots over there. I was like, "Dude, why were you behind the wheel at all? Like, are you out of your mind?" He's like, "Yeah, I just thought the car would be safer, I think, but I don't remember." So he keeps saying, "John and I, if it was anybody else, I would have said no, but John wanted to drink beers and do shots, so I got to let him." Of course, John's the guy that you abuse to fix your car. Him and his wife are very nice. They come up here a lot of times to the studio. Fast forward to Sunday, where we are out at Monk's to do the big picture unveiling, which was great, and thank you to everybody that showed up. So Antman gets there. He's very late, and he's jittery and squirrely, and his eyes haven't been opened since Friday night.
Okay.
Like, all Saturday night, his eyes were slits. Like, I kept thinking he was asleep, but he just couldn't open his eyes. And he drank Saturday night. Like, he was drinking airplane bottles of gin. He had a couple of beers, but he didn't go crazy. On Sunday, he's out at Monk's. He's refusing to drink. He won't drink at all, and he's being weird. Like, at one point, we see him just standing there at the end of the bar by himself, just like staring off into the fucking distance, and he's real jittery, and like we can't really figure out what's going on with him. John shows up. John from John and Amanda.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, John." I was like, "Man, you got to tell us, like, what the fuck happened on Friday night? Like, did Antman get thrown out? Like, how did that evening end?" And John's like, "What?" I was like, "When you guys were hanging out on Friday night, because Antman said you invited him over to Patriots, and so you're gonna burn it down." John's like, "I was in bed at 9 o'clock on Friday night." I said, "What? What?" Antman says you guys are texting. He told me like what you guys were talking about at the bar. No. I didn't text Antman. I was at home. I was like, I made kebabs and I went to bed.
Pretty good night.
That's not pretty good. I said, "What?" So then I asked Antman, John says he wasn't at Patriots. And Antman, his eyes open for the first time, and he goes, "Well, then who the fuck did I hang out with all night?" Is it him? Uh-huh. Oh my God. Oh man.
0.
Here he comes. It's the hibachi.
0.
Oh man. Oh, by the way, I forgot this one too.
Dragon. I'll show you, Dragon.
Thank you to the Spider Clamp family for coming out. Hey man, how are you, bud?
I'm good now that I've got the microphone turned the right way.
Yeah, that is not bad. Do you remember holding 2 microphones and screaming at Tor while the microphones were turned off and nothing was being recorded on Friday night?
I don't remember anything. I don't even know if I remember the end of the show, to be honest.
That doesn't surprise me because we just got to the part of the story. I told the story about how you went gardening on late Friday evening. Have they figured out that was you yet?
Nothing's been said yet, but I think that I mean, I have gotten some dirty looks while I'm backing out of the driveway.
Sure, yeah.
So I'm sure they were like, these were fine before we went to sleep.
They're in pretty rough shape
The
now.
only thing that's changed is Anthony's here. His car is not, so he was hammered. And our rose bush is demolished.
God, that's pretty.
Dude, he was picking out like those little red berries out of his arm at the store on Saturday.
Dude, I still have like little scratches and cuts all over my hand. I have 2 huge cuts on my leg from where my legs got caught up in them.
All right, I got to see those cuts.
My legs got caught up in them. Oh, don't take your pants. Are you gonna do it right now? Oh, Jesus, he's taking his pants off.
Oh my God.
He's got bruises too. Well, that's because you fell down, probably.
Yeah, I fell pretty hard too.
You fought with that rose bush that night.
Yeah, and then I couldn't get out of it because I didn't want to touch it to get it off of me.
You couldn't get out of the rose bush?
Yeah, so it took me a minute, and how I finally did it was I just kept rolling.
No wonder
I didn't want to touch anything because I kept stabbing my hands and it hurt.
How long would you say this MMA match went on?
Probably a good 5 minutes. I was gassed.
You're having a Brazilian jiu-jitsu with a holly bush.
Yeah. And the worst part is I didn't realize that I had all those thorns and splinters in my hand that night until I woke up the next morning and I was like, oh, my hands hurt so bad. And then I looked down and they were all puffy and I had like an entire thorn. Yeah, in my
Don't
finger
take the
right
thorn out of
here.
that lion's paw, Tor. You'd
like,
be a fool to do it.
All in my knuckles. It was a disaster.
Did you realize those people have to love that rose bush, right?
Oh,
They
I'm
have to
sure.
have loved
It's
it.
the only one that is actually growing or was growing properly that they've tried to plant.
That's a bummer.
It's a big bummer. And I mean, you would agree with this. You live in the quietest, like most suburban neighborhood in the history of mankind.
So quiet. And here's the thing. So I'm so glad the neighbor on the right and the left of my house
Put your
don't get
pants up,
along.
Tor. Jesus Christ.
Because the guy on the right side, his Ring doorbell aims directly at their garage where I was pissing. And
so
where
if he
the
wanted to
rose bush
fuck
is.
you over, he could.
Right. The good thing is he is a stone cold alcoholic too. So I'm sure he goes, well, I've done it before. I worked for him when I was a kid. I want to ask him, but then I don't want to ask him and it'd be like,
No, I wouldn't
kind of
bring it
want to
up.
see.
I mean, if you could get that video, that would be worth so much money.
Because it had to trigger his Ring.
100%.
Yeah, the Uber
Will
dropped me
you-
off right in front of his house.
Are you on good terms with the dude?
Oh, yeah. He, like, when I'm away, he brings all my mail in and
Okay.
shit.
Why don't you just go tell him, hey, man, I do this podcast, and I think this happened. Is there any chance we could check your Ring? Because there's a producer on the podcast that has been longing to see my genitals for a very long time. And so if we can make that happen.
I'll definitely ask him today.